I guess, better to have 4 new Democratic senators, so we have a majority of the Senate, in which case we will have the Senate in Democratic hands. The majority leader of the Senate will bring the Equality Act to the floor for a vote. It will pass. It will then be sent to the president's desk, and President Biden will sign it. If we don't elect a Democratic Senate and we don't elect Joe Biden, the Equality Act will not become the law of the land, and discrimination against the LGBTQ community will continue in America.
Thank you. That was so clear. I just want to make sure to repeat this, right? Easily will pass the House. We have 47 currently, 47 Democratic senators, all of whom have said, we want to vote for the Equality Act. Mitch, please bring it up. He has not brought it up. So if we get that number from 47 to 50, plus Kamala Harris to break the tie, or better yet, we don't need Kamala, to 51, Chuck Schumer then would be the majority leader. And unless there's some internal battle where he's not, it's Elizabeth Warren, but whoever the majority leader is, will bring that bill up. How certain are you that the Senate majority leader, if it is a Democrat, would bring up your Equality Act if they have the majority?
Absolutely certain. Every single Democratic senator is a co-sponsor, and they would insist that this bill be brought to the floor for vote. I'm completely confident of that.
Okay. And how certain are you on a scale of 0 to 100 that a President Joe Biden would sign it?
100. He's already said he would be proud to sign the Equality Act. He spoke out in favor of marriage equality before it was in vogue to do so. He's been a great champion for our community, and he absolutely will not only sign it, he said he would make it a priority, and he will fight hard for its passage.
So people say, oh, there's these 2 old white men and there's no difference. They both suck. No, Donald Trump would not sign the Equality Act if it somehow made it to his desk if he was reelected, and Joe Biden, 100%.
Not only would President Trump not sign it, he has done more to kind of roll back protections that our community has gained over the last 4 years of the Obama-Biden administration. He's rolled back important protections. He's appointed judges that are antithetical to equality for the LGBTQ community. So he's really been in many ways an adversary to equality for the LGBTQ community. So he not only wouldn't sign the Equality Act, he's done a real harm to our community. For the LGBTQ community, there couldn't be a stronger contrast between Joe Biden's record, his commitment to fight for equality for the LGBTQ community, his willingness to fight for the Equality Act and sign it into law, and to President Trump, who has really been an enemy, really, of the LGBTQ community, and has made it clear that he won't lift a finger to help pass the Equality Act, nor would he sign it.
Got it. One more thing about civics. It's incredibly clear. Let's say you have 51 United States senators, and Mitch McConnell, even as the minority leader, or any other Republican, tries to filibuster it. What happens then?
There will be a cloture vote, and as long as we have a majority, the bill would proceed to the floor for a vote.
But wouldn't you need 60?
It depends on the vehicle that the Senate uses to bring the bill to the floor. I will confess I'm not an expert in this, but I think that there's a mechanism for them to simply have a majority vote under certain circumstances. So obviously we have 60 votes. It makes its passage a lot easier. But I think even with a majority, there are vehicles or mechanisms in the Senate that can force a vote on this. And I think actually we'll get a couple of Republican senators. I think they haven't been courageous enough to stand up to Mitch McConnell, but I think they'd be hard pressed, some of them, if they're reelected, to vote against the Equality Act.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There are ways to have this be a 51-person vote, but there's also talk about nuking the filibuster, which would mean that not only your bill, but virtually any other of the great progressive bills that Nancy Pelosi has gotten passed and will pass again would be able to become the law of the land. So let's just talk quickly. We had a new justice to replace the unbelievable, notorious RBG. I think it's pretty clear that she is against LGBTQ rights, and probably 100% against marriage equality. What do you think are the chances that, I believe it's called Obergefell, will be overturned by Amy Coney Barrett Supreme Court?
Well, I think there's a lot of reason to be very concerned about it. We also have writings of several justices sitting on the court who have argued that the case was improperly decided. We have the Amy Coney Barrett's writings on this. In fact, she was so, I think, contemptuous of the LGBTQ community that she described the LGBTQ lifestyle as if it's something you pick out of your closet to wear that day, displaying a complete ignorance of what it means to be a member of the LGBTQ community. It's not a lifestyle, it's who you are, it's your identity. So I think there's every reason to believe, based on her refusal to answer questions, but mostly her writing and her prior decisions, to be very concerned not only about marriage equality, but about voting rights, reproductive health care, environmental justice. I mean, there are lots and lots of reasons to be concerned about the rights of our community, but also rights broadly that matter in our country.
So, and here's the question. By the way, Ben Shapiro has said that being gay is a choice, kind of a bad habit that you should just somehow be able to break. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like to be gay and listen to these people talk. It's unbelievable.
I mean, it's deeply offensive, and it shows a total ignorance of what it means to be a member of the LGBTQ community. When you look at the rate of suicide and addiction and the number of young people that are kicked out of their homes because of their sexual orientation or gender identity or can't find work, the idea that people just decide to pick this to make their lives more meaningful and fuller is absurd. It's who we are. It's not a choice. It is your identity, and people who say that don't know what they're talking about.
David, have you been on the other end of discrimination in your political career?
You know, I've been lucky. I mean, I'm sure there have been people who have not voted me because I'm gay and I, ran and was honest about my sexual orientation. But I have to say, I've been very lucky in my life. Both my family, the community I represent, the city that I led as mayor for 8 years, the state that I live in, is filled with people who judge me on the quality of my ideas and the integrity of my work and what I fight for. And I think compared to most people, I've suffered very little discrimination in my life that I know about. And I'm really the exception rather than the rule in that way.
Well, a Rhode Island native, Deborah Messing, I was talking to her yesterday. She is very proud that you are representing her native state of Rhode Island, and so proud of who you are.
We're proud of her too.
Yeah, Rhode Island in the house.
Yes.
So just the last part of that question about Obergefell. So if the Equality Act passes and is signed into law by President Joe Biden, God willing, it could happen quickly, right? It could be, this thing could happen by the end of January, right? I mean, if you guys fast tracked it, is that true?
Yes, I mean, we could do it, right away. And obviously the Senate operates a little more slowly, but there's no reason it couldn't happen in the first few months of a Biden administration.
But here's where I'm going with that. So let's say Obergefell with a 6-3 Republican court gets overturned, and marriage equality instantly vanishes as quickly as it was created back in 2015. Would the Equality Act then allow gay marriages under federal law rather than under a Supreme Court decision?
Well, unfortunately, marriage is governed by state law. So there's not a federal marriage requirement or a federal marriage. So, but it would be tough for a state to argue in the face of a federal prohibition against discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity, that they could create a state statute to discriminate based on sexual orientation or gender identity, and that would be challenged. But it would be up to states to provide statutory protection for marriage equality. I think if someone challenged it, there's a reasonable argument under normal circumstances that the court would say it violates the Equality Act, at least in principle. But since marriage is a matter of state law, the safest thing would be for states to pass marriage equality on their own if the Supreme Court reverses the decision that they previously decided.
Okay, what about something though that the federal government has complete control over? Can all of those transgender servicemen be rehired under.
Oh, yeah. So for anyone who is, for anything that relates to federal law, discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity would be illegal. So that's in all those areas.
Perfect. Last question. I am a huge fan. We've talked about this off camera about the unbelievably awesome, progressive, even historic legislation that you guys passed right out of right off the bat. HR 1, the Government for the People Act, HR 4, now the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act, your HR 5 Equality Act, HR 6, the DREAM Act, HR 7, the amazing Rosa DeLauro's Paycheck Fairness Act, HR 8, the Background Checks Act, and HR 9, the Climate Action Now Act. Do you feel confident that all of these incredibly prioritized progressive pieces of legislation will be brought up in the United States Senate if we get the majority there and signed by Joe Biden?
Absolutely. And 325 other excellent bills that are sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk too.
I sure wish people knew more about it. Which are the ones that you are most passionate about? Bills.
I mean, the
HR
1 through HR 10 are really kind of always identified as the top priorities for the new Congress. So the ones that you listed, particularly HR 1, which is the biggest anti-corruption bill since Watergate, a universal background checks.
Hold on. I want you to say that again. Right. And so
this is the biggest
in 1974.
Right. This is the biggest, most comprehensive anti-corruption bill passed by Congress since Watergate that raises ethical standards, that brings greater transparency, that reduces the influence of corporate money in our elections and returns power to the people. This is a transformative bill. The reason we did it first as the #1 bill, HR 1, because we recognize that until we reduce the influence of corporate money in our elections and corporate power, we won't fully restore power to the people of this country. And part of the reason we don't have a good energy policy and we pay too much for prescription drugs and we don't have good gun safety laws is because of the corrupting influence of money in our elections. And HR 1 addresses that. And it really affects almost all the other work we do. But if you want a good guide of what would happen if we have a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate, and a Joe Biden president, look at the bills that we've passed in our For the People agenda. Those are the priorities of the American people: driving down the cost of healthcare, driving down the cost of prescription drugs, protecting coverage for pre-existing conditions, raising family incomes by rebuilding the infrastructure of America, and taking on the corruption and self-dealing in Washington and getting the government to work for the people. Those bills reflect the majority, the priorities of the American people. They're just stuck in the Senate because Mitch McConnell is too busy jamming through right-wing conservative judges, many times unqualified, rather than taking up the people's business.
That's a perfect closing argument. And I just want to add the math to that, which is all we have to do is flip 3 of the 23 Republican Senate seats and elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So by electing 4 more Democrats, we can get all of those incredibly wonderful, historic, progressive pieces of legislation, especially, and I agree with you about HR 1, and people who say, oh, corporate money, big corporations are controlling everything, you know, like what Sheldon Whitehouse was saying during the confirmation hearing, that can be addressed and fixed, right? But I have to criticize you and your colleagues a little bit, not you personally, but what the Democrats have done is a little bit like owning a $400,000 Ferrari or $200,000 Tesla Roadster and keeping it in the garage. No one knows about these bills, David. We've got to get that information out. Do you have any suggestions on that other than this call right now?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, you'd be surprised what the polling data shows about people understanding that Mitch McConnell is blocking progress on a lot of bills. They don't know every bill number. But I think the House Democratic colleagues have done a very good job in their own districts through their local media. You don't see it on cable news. It's not interesting for them to cover. But we've done a really intentional effort to be sure that at the local level, through their local broadcast, their local newspapers, that folks understand the work of the Democratic majority in the House, the progress we've made on all of these bills and why they haven't become law yet. And so I think part of the reason Mitch McConnell is the most unpopular elected official in America is because people do understand that House Democrats have passed hundreds of bills that will improve the lives of the American people, and Mitch McConnell refuses to take them up. So they may not know the bill number, they may not know the quality of all the bills, but they know we're working hard to deliver on the priorities of the American people, and someone's standing in the way, and they know that's Republicans in the Senate led by Mitch McConnell.
So Congressman David Cicilline, one of the most courageous legislators I have ever known. I was a congressional intern in 1974, so I've been following Congress for a long time. You really are an extraordinary legislator. And just to repeat the math, 4 more Democrats, and we can pass the Equality Act, which as a straight person, it just pains me to hear what you're saying, that there are still laws on the books in states that, I mean, it's almost like saying, oh yes, well, Black people, you're still 3/5, of a human being. I mean, we either have equality in this country or we don't. And very clearly we don't, and your bill is going to make a big, big difference. Thank you so much, Congressman.
Thanks, Richard.
Let's everyone go vote, and vote for Democrats, and vote for the Equality Act. Thanks, David.
Thank you so much.
Take care.